to Hoystory on Air, Season 2, Episode 24, 2 days in a row. Um, Talked yesterday about the Iran Memorandum of Understanding / deal. Um, what can I say? I was right. It's an absolute joke. And the people, and it's been observed, a lot of the people are saying, oh, no, that couldn't possibly be the deal. Now that they realize that's the deal, they're all for it. Bad. What do you expect? I mean, it's partisanship all the way around, and it's bad. Talking today about education. And this was posted last week over at the Free Press, Barry Weiss's former publication. She's now at CBS News, but I think she still has a lot to do with this publication. Svetlana Jitmoriska, something like that, put up a piece saying, bring back the SAT. California universities dropped the SAT to help low-income and minority students. The policy is doing the opposite. And I agree with her. And I want to go through this article. I'd encourage you to subscribe to the Free Press after you've subscribed to my Substack, of course. Free Press should be next, but mine should be first, because that helps me keep on doing this sort of thing. So she writes, Diego sported a shiny blue Cal jacket and beamed with Berkeley pride as I interviewed him for the Fiat Lux Scholarship, the top award for low-income, high-achieving students admitted to the University of California, Berkeley. He was one of the finalists. Diego grew up in a one-bedroom apartment with his parents and sister. His father worked as a gardener and his mother was a factory worker. Their family income was below $35,000. Diego's dream was to pursue a degree and career in mechanical engineering, designing better agricultural machinery for farmers like his grandfather. By all the measures available to him, he had done everything right. This sounds like one of the kids I see during the school year here in the Central Valley of California. This is very typical. Let me put it that way. There's a lot of kids like Diego. He took nearly every advanced class in his high school offered and earned stellar grades, including an A in AP Calculus AB as an 11th grader. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, Calculus AB is like the first 2 quarters of college calculus. BC is like quarters 2 and 3. So this is the lower level AP Calculus. It doesn't get into multivariable calculus. It's single variable. He seemed like the kind of student targeted by Governor Gavin Newsom's Higher Education Compact, a multi-billion-dollar agreement pressuring the UC system to close racial and socioeconomic gaps in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics by admitting students like Diego into its premier programs. But Diego also scored a 1 out of 5 on his AP Calculus exam. That's why he was exactly the kind of student the compact is likely to fail. Ladies and gentlemen, that's bad. I speak from my own experience here, and it's a long time ago. I took the AP Calculus AB exam as a senior. I could have taken calculus as a junior. I finished pre-calculus at the end of my sophomore year. Unfortunately, my father's a high school history teacher, and history is usually junior year. The calculus class and the AP history class were the same class period. I could not take both as a junior. So you can guess which one won out. But I took it as a senior, and I was pulling a C plus B minus in my high school calculus class. I got a 5 on the exam. I can remember, walking down, because at the time teachers got scores like a week, 3 or 4 days before you as a student would get them in the mail. And so my dad said, hey, they mailed the scores out, because my dad taught at a different high school. Go down there and see what you got. And so I went down there, talked with the head of the department, because my calculus teacher wasn't there. The department head was somebody else. And he says, well, I don't know what you got, but everyone in the class got a 5. So I was, middle bottom of the calculus class, and I still got a 5. This is the exact opposite problem. The teacher at the school is giving out A's, but the students don't know the stuff, which is a huge problem. Goes on. What does an A grade in AP Calculus mean when it's paired with a score of 1 on the national exam? Exactly what a recent UC San Diego report revealed. In too many public schools, grades have become completely decoupled from learning. I mentioned, and I'll put a link up to it up there when this comes out. I mentioned this report late last year when it came out. Yes, this is a problem. It says none of this was Diego's fault. It's the school's fault. But now he would face the reality of a world-class university. He would be required to retake calculus at Berkeley before moving on to the grueling upper division requirements of mechanical engineering. With his immense drive and determination, common sense says he would catch up, right? Getting into calculus in 11th grade is impressive, I told him during the interview. How and when did you realize you were good at math? Math was always very difficult for me, Diego replied, but I worked hard and memorized all the formulas. This is the last thing a math professor wants to hear. Mathematics is not about rote memorization. It's about conceptual understanding and logical reasoning, and Diego was never taught the difference. Like countless students at schools where teachers don't understand mathematics themselves, he was instead taught what my colleague Hung Sui Wu calls anti-mathematics, a confusing, disconnected collection of unexplained procedures to be memorized for a test and then immediately forgotten. Yeah, this is not good. And I hate to say this, but, we'll go on because we'll get into this. None of this would be likely if the UC system still used a standardized test benchmark. The SAT was completely abolished for UC admissions by the Board of Regents' decision in 2020, driven by concerns that standardized tests disadvantage minority and low-income students. I don't know what beeped. This decision went against the unanimous, data-driven recommendation of the UC Faculty Task Force and against many of the Board of Regents' own stated convictions. The SAT, imperfect as it is, measures knowledge of the absolute basics and the ability to reason clearly under a time constraint. An SAT score would have told us, and Diego himself, the truth about his preparation before it was too late. This also kind of boils down to this drive by university officials to bring in more minority students and whatnot. The problem is, and I think the author Thomas Sowell has talked a lot about this, is there's a skills mismatch. Diego going to UC Berkeley, maybe he very well, what happens a lot is he fails. And he drops out and he's got tens of thousands of dollars in tuition loans that he needs to pay back, but he doesn't have a degree. Whereas if he went to some place like, CSU I'm just picking names out of a hat, CSU Long Beach or, one of the CSU systems, Cal Poly would be the exception. But, went to one of those schools, there's more, they realize what level of students they have. You go into UC Berkeley, they think they've got the tippy top. You go to UCLA, they think they've got the tippy top. And when the administration and the regents and whatnot game it to pull in more people who have a skin color or whatnot that they like, that disconnect dooms these students. It says, even more importantly, preparing for the test is itself a powerful intervention. If Diego knew that the SAT stood between him and a Berkeley engineering degree, his drive would have led him to use free, you hope this will be the case, free high-quality resources away from rote memorization and toward real mathematical reasoning. The preparation itself would have rewired his foundation. We failed Diego once by not providing him a decent math education. We should not fail students like him again by removing the incentive to build one themselves. This is a great point. And it's data that we don't have, unfortunately. If you're looking at these top students, I'm not sure how much, as much as it's used, you can trust the CASP, which is the California state kind of assessment tests that all students are supposed to take. I'm not sure how much you can trust that, because again, it's the state of California, and they've been playing this game for decades with higher education, and they've been making it worse. She continues, this is why my UC colleagues and I wrote an open letter to the regents demanding a return to standardized testing. Within days, it gathered over 1,400 signatures, including those of 60 department chairs across the UC system. This unprecedented consensus is significant because STEM faculty aren't political activists. They usually aren't really liberal either. They're the most conservative leaning kind of group of professors there are. They're the ones shaping California's next generation of mathematicians and engineers. Diego was my first personal encounter with this systemic breakdown. My primary focus is research. I teach graduate and elective upper division math classes. The undergrads I see there range from good to amazing. In fact, I am seeing more and more freshmen doing remarkably well in tough graduate level courses. Many of my colleagues teaching introductory gateway courses are not so lucky. They report a feeling of the bottom falling out of the classroom. In my second year engineering class, a student asked me to explain why 1/2 plus 1/3 equals 5/6, one professor said. The lecture had to stop while I explained fractions. Ladies and gentlemen, this absolutely blows my mind. You get into a second year engineering class at a UC school, and you've got a student in there that doesn't understand fractions. And apparently it wasn't a joke. I mean, I can remember sitting around studying for my AP US history exam, and we joked about the look our teacher, Mira Lee, gave us when one of us, quoted something that was obviously wrong, or stated, made a statement about history that was obviously so wrong. And it's like she was personally offended that you had failed her by not knowing this. And one kid said, I'm not sure I've ever seen that look on her face. And we're like, you're kidding. I said, we'll get her to make the face for you. And so we started talking, we're talking about something, and I said, I'm not even sure it was me, but somebody said, well, President Alexander Hamilton, and boom, the look. And we all stopped and said, that's it. And we know that Alexander Hamilton wasn't president. But this is the same. It blows my mind. So this wasn't a joke. Obviously, it should have been a joke. Second year engineering, and they don't understand fractions like that. Ladies and gentlemen, I've seen this at the level before. I confess I'm a substitute teacher. If I were a high school math teacher, the students would hate my guts. Why? Because I would be doing with them what my elementary teachers did with me. And I remember this distinctly. We would, 1 or 2 times a week probably, and you had to work your way up, we had multiplication tables. And you had a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, probably 5 questions across, 7 down maybe, so 35 multiplication questions. You had a minute to do them. And first it was the ones, 1 times 7, 1 times 3, that. And then once you were able to do that in a minute, you got the twos and the ones. So it was 2 times 4, 2 times 8, 2 times 12, top down at 12 or 13 if I recall correctly. And the 3s, 4, so on until you got to the 12s, and then you had like mixed ones to do. But what happened was, by the end of the year, or sooner, hopefully, you knew that stuff off the top of your head. I have, on more than one occasion, encountered students in Algebra 2 level classes or higher where they're doing factoring or they're multiplying binomials. And it's like, okay, you sit there and what's 3 times 7? And they pull out the calculator. They should know that off the top of their head. They should know anything up to 12 off the top of their head. 5 times 12, 60. I mean, it's 8 times 12, 96. 5 times 6, 30. They should know these things. And they don't. And, if I'm doing that, if I was doing that with high school students, I'm sure I would be really unpopular really quick. Don't care. The root cause of this bifurcation is California's broken K-12 education. Teachers are trapped in systems that prioritize ideology over subject mastery, pressured by administrators to inflate grades, lower standards, and pass unprepared students along. Yes, this happens way too much. You get students who are incredibly lazy, and you lower the standards so you're not flunking half the class. And why are they lazy? Why don't they care? Why are they unprepared? Well, because they'll go up to the next grade the next year. We don't hold kids back. We certainly don't hold them back repeatedly. I mean, if you're an 18-year-old ninth grader, either we're just going to age you out of the system and write you off, and it's like, okay, maybe you can. I used to say, we need ditch diggers too. I've got a lot of respect for ditch diggers. I got a lot of respect for people who do work with their hands. But if you won't be taught, if you won't try, if you don't have the drive, there's not much that can be done for you. And having the education system just, give you a stamp of approval just because you've gotten older, that's a problem. The state has spent tens of billions of dollars on a high-speed rail line that has yielded zero benefit. It has spent far more and done far worse, inflicting immense generational damage on California's youth by failing to provide them a quality K-12 math education. Yeah, there is a lot of that. It's disappointing. Other than holding the kids back, and that's part of it. I feel for teachers who have to deal with students who just don't care. I've got to be here because it's the law. Otherwise, I'd be at home playing video games. That's unfortunate. But on the flip side, there are what I like to call Mr. Coopers. And Mr. Cooper was my 8th grade history teacher for the first trimester at the junior high school I went to. Mr. Cooper's teaching involved, you would come in to class each day, he would write the pages from the textbook that you were to read, and the questions from the back of that chapter that you were to answer, and write them down and turn them in. And that was U.S. history every day. I hated it. And being the son of a high school U.S. history teacher, this is not a good look. So there's a lot to go. There's a lot of blame to go around. Just take University High School in Irvine. And here's another problem. An academic powerhouse that offers 26 advanced placement classes and often produces close to 50 national merit semifinalists a year. Its grading standards are notoriously rigorous. Nearly 100% of its students in AP Calculus BC, again, this is the second and third quarter calculus classes, pass the national exam with a perfect score of 5. Yet less than 30% of them manage to secure an A in the classroom. That was me in high school. That was me. So she says, Anna was a student there. Her eyes would light up when she talked about math. She alternated between the apartments of her divorced parents, immigrants from different countries. Her father endured a punishing 2-hour daily commute so that she could live near a strong public school. Anna held a 4.2 GPA, spent many hours volunteering as a peer tutor, and took 5 AP classes her junior year. Yet she was still rejected by every UC campus to which she applied. She would have done great at Berkeley, but now she will start at a community college instead. Ladies and gentlemen, this is nuts, but I tell you this happens. A friend of my wife and I, her son, is the kid's a genius. He's probably 21 or so by now. He had a perfect score on the SAT. He is a whiz at math. And he applied to a bunch of UC schools. He applied to Cal Poly because that's where he lived close to Cal Poly. And if you live kind of in the county, usually you get a little bump up getting a chance to go because that's the local school. Cal Poly's slow, not one of the two fake Cal Polys. And he got in basically nowhere. He's white and he's male. And he'd been working on math stuff with, professors or whatnot at UCLA and stuff. He still couldn't get in. What they offered him, UC Merced. I don't want to bash UC Merced. I'm sure it's fine-ish. It's not Berkeley. It's not UCLA. It's not UC San Diego. None of those schools would have him. A year later, I think he finally got into Cal Poly and left after a couple of quarters. He's now earning 6 figures at a tech company because he's that smart. Another friend of the family, he used to be in charge of Sony Online Entertainment's computer system, and he dropped down to UC San Diego. He's that smart. He doesn't need the degree. And so why does Diego get in and Anna not? Well, remarkably, she was not bitter. Only geniuses get into Berkeley now. She said you need a 4.4 GPA and maybe an International Science and Engineering Fair award. But I'll be there in 2 years. Good for you, Anna. Indeed, Berkeley's admissions from University High have been slashed from 50 to 60 students per year to roughly 30. Now look at Mission High School in San Francisco. The official state data reveals that a staggering 93.87% of its students failed to meet the state standards in mathematics. Which of these two student bodies should have a higher acceptance rate to premier engineering and STEM programs in the UC system? Common sense dictates the answer, yet under the current rubric, the reality is exactly inverted. While fewer than 14% of applicants from University High were accepted into Berkeley this year, Mission High boasted a whopping 45% admission rate. In fact, Berkeley admitted 34 students from Mission High, twice the number of those who even met the state standards. This is the classic case of the soft bigotry of low expectations. And those students will get into UC Berkeley, and they will get a shock, and they will have a tuition loan or something like that, and they won't have a degree. That's what's many of them. This is insane. I can remember doing proctoring for the state tests and whatnot. And students are like, well, I'm going this place, or I'm going into the military, or I'm going to a trade school or something. Why should I even bother with this? And I tried to kind of appeal to their better nature. I said, look, here's the thing. You may not want to go to a UC school or a Cal State school or meet those A through G requirements that they have so you get into those colleges. You may just want to go to a trade school. You may just want to go to get an AA degree, and that's as far as you want to go at a community college. But I told them, the better you do on this exam, the better the school looks, and the better chance that, based on how the school ranks, maybe your little brother or little sister, when they come along, maybe they do want to go to a UC school. If this is a good school and they have good grades from a good school based on, rank based on this test, they've got a better chance of getting in. So do this for your little brother or little sister. Or if you're the youngest one, I would hope that your older siblings kind of did this for you. I was apparently wrong. I should have told them to tank it, because apparently that's the way with these nut jobs running the UC system to get ahead. That's most of the article. There's one other point that I wanted to bring up that she talks about in the article as far as education goes. And she talks about how there was kind of a ranking of colleges within the state. At the bottom, you had the community colleges. Those are basically open to everyone. That's, if you didn't get your education you needed in high school, that's where you kind of got the remedial stuff and the lower level stuff that prepared you for either a CSU school, or above that was a UC school. Now, my alma mater, Cal Poly, it's more up in the UC area, even though they don't give out doctorates. That's probably why it's not as prestigious as Berkeley or UCLA. But engineering, it's just as tough to get into, if not more difficult. The problem is the legislators in Sacramento are legislating based on feelings and not based on what's best for the student. It's, we need to get the numbers of minorities up. It's not, we need to improve the education that these minorities are getting. We just, and you can't hold them back, because if you hold them back, typically you're more likely to hold back someone who's from, who's black or brown or, something like that. And that is, again, the soft bigotry of low expectations. If you hold them back, it's a better opportunity to learn. So we do this social promotion, which, basically tells too many students that, do whatever you want. You'll still, get promoted. You'll still graduate. You don't have to try hard to graduate. You do not have to try hard to graduate from high school in California. Then you get to the community colleges. And the community colleges for decades have had an issue where they get students who kind of coasted through social promotion, who got, who graduated high school with a diploma, but they have gaps in their learning. Sometimes huge gaps, often in math, equally often probably in English. I mean, writing is just atrocious. But the legislators in Sacramento a few years ago, and they've patted themselves on their back for this, basically said, look, you can't require students to take a class at a JC, a remedial class at the JC. You can't require them to take a class for which they will get no credit for towards their AA degree, or eventually a BA degree or a BS degree. Because they're finding out a lot of students were being shocked. Well, I took this class, I got an A, but it's not on my transcript. It's like, well, because that was a remedial class. I worked for a textbook publishing company, a small textbook publishing company, once I got out of journalism. We did math textbooks. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the bottom level math textbook that we sold to community colleges and some four-year colleges across the country was called Introductory Mathematics. The first chapter was place values and names for numbers. It was ones, tens, hundreds, hundredths, thousandths, and how you would write numbers out on a check. That's the first chapter. We sold tens of thousands of copies of that book every year. And why? Because there were students who needed that. There were students who had not mastered that. The author of that piece is talking about a second-year engineering student who cannot do basic fractions. That was necessary, and the students didn't get it. So now they've got students, it's like, okay, I want to do pre-engineering or something like, math, sort of STEM degree, but they don't know Algebra 1. Well, you don't get credit for anything under, say, pre-calc. But if you don't know Algebra 1, you can't do the pre-calc. So at the same time they're teaching pre-calc, they're also having to, at no cost to the student, and they can't, force the student to buy a textbook like the one my company was selling. They've got to try and do this parallel thing where we'll teach the remedial stuff at the same time we're teaching you the advanced stuff. It's not easy for anyone. But that's our education system in California today. It's probably not different than a whole lot of other blue states. Some red states are apparently doing better, but we need to fix it. Reinstating the SAT and or ACT would be a good step on that road. Follow me on Substack. Follow me on social media. The links are there. Buy my book. I always get that on the wrong side. It's over here. QR code there for my book. Again, if you follow me on Substack, you follow me on X. I've been doing promotions for the new book. Been doing some podcasts. There are links there to all of those if you want to hear somebody else talk at me. Ask me questions, and often they're excellent questions. I don't always have the answers. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.